The fluorescent lights in the police station flickered faintly, buzzing like impatient bees. Kira Johnson sat stiffly in the hard plastic chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The 16-year-old's wide-brown eyes betrayed both fear and indignation. It had been a terrible day already. She had been walking home from the library when a small incident, a mix-up at a corner store involving a false shoplifting accusation, spiraled into something bigger. Someone had called the cops, and though the shopkeeper had eventually realized Kara wasn't the culprit, the responding officer hadn't let her go right away. Instead, he had brought her to the station for questioning. Now, she sat across from Officer Bradley Hanks, a tall, broad man with thinning hair and a smirk that seemed permanently etched onto his face. His badge gleamed under the sterile light, but the condescension in his eyes dulled any sense of authority he might have carried. "So," Hanks said, leaning back in his chair, arms folded across his chest, "you're telling me you weren't stealing? That it was just a misunderstanding?" Kira nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. I didn't do anything wrong. I told you, I was just buying a notebook. You can even check the receipt." Hanks chuckled, shaking his head slowly. "Kids these days always got an excuse, always think they can talk their way out." He leaned forward suddenly, his tone sharper. "So, if you weren't stealing, who's supposed to vouch for you? Your parents?" "My mom will," Kira said without hesitation, though her voice trembled slightly. "Your mom, huh?" Hanks sneered. "And what does she do? Work at the grocery store? Secretary? Nurse?" Kara's spine straightened. She hated the dismissiveness in his tone, the way he assumed things about her family just because of her skin color, her hoodie, her quiet presence. She swallowed, then said clearly, "My mom's in the Special Forces." The room went still for a second, then Hanks erupted into laughter. "Special Forces?" he wheezed, slapping his knee. "That's a good one. What, she in the movies? G.I. Jane?" "Please, kid." His laugh was loud, ugly, echoing through the small room. "You think I'm gonna believe that? A single mom, Special Forces? Don't insult my intelligence." Kira's cheeks burned, but she kept her head high. "I'm not lying. My mom's a soldier. She's been deployed overseas. She trains people, too. She's not here most of the time, but when she is, she's a broken bar. She's amazing." Hanks rolled his eyes. Sure, let me guess. She also flies fighter jets on the weekends, right?" He leaned in close, his grin cruel. "Listen, sweetheart, I've been around long enough to know when a kid's making stuff up. Special Forces isn't for women, especially Nota well." He gestured vaguely at her, his meaning sharp and unmistakable. The weight of his words pressed down on Kira, but she refused to let tears fall. "You don't know anything about my mom." "Oh, I know enough," Hanks said smugly. "You're just another teenager making up stories, thinking it'll get you out of trouble. News flash, it doesn't." The door creaked open then, and another officer poked his head in. "Hey, Bradley, you got a visitor." "Says she's the girl's mom." Kira's heart leapt. Relief surged through her chest. She stood, almost tripping over her chair in her rush. Hanks raised an eyebrow. "Perfect timing. Let's meet this Special Forces mom, shall we?" He walked to the door, his grin widening as if he were about to expose a fraud. But when he opened the door, the smirk slid right off his face. Standing there was Sergeant Major Ilana Johnson. Her presence filled the hallway before she even stepped in. Dressed in fatigues, her uniform crisp, her boots polished to a mirror shine, Ilana's posture radiated discipline and quiet power. A patch on her sleeve clearly displayed her Special Forces insignia. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes, a piercing, steady, locked immediately onto her daughter. "Kira," she said firmly, but with warmth. "Are you all right?" Kira ran to her mother, burying her face in her chest. "Mom, I told Thama broken bar I told them you'd come." Ilana held her daughter close for a brief moment before her gaze shifted to Officer Hanks. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Hanks stammered, his jaw working but no words coming out. He stared at the insignia, the rank, the rows of commendations on her chest. This wasn't some story. This was real. "Officer," Ilana said, her voice calm but commanding, "would you care to explain why my daughter was detained when she has committed no crime?" Hanks fumbled. "Well, mama, it was just procedure. She, matched a description, and, You matched a description, Alana repeated slowly, her eyes narrowing. You took my daughter to a station because she was in a store buying supplies? It was just a misunderstanding, Hanks said quickly, sweat beginning to bead at his forehead. We were just asking questions. Alana stepped closer, her presence towering though she wasn't much taller than him. You mocked her, you accused her of lying about her own family, and from the look on her face, you dismissed her because of who she is. That is unacceptable. Hanks swallowed hard. The arrogance he had worn so proudly minutes ago was gone, replaced by nervous stammering. Another officer appeared behind Alana, his expression respectful. Sergeant Major Johnson, I apologize. We'll straighten this out immediately. Alana nodded curtly, never taking her eyes off Hanks. See that you do. And, Officer Hanks, next time a young woman tells you the truth, you might consider believing her instead of laughing in her face. Kira looked up at her mom with pride swelling in her chest. For the first time since being dragged here, she felt safe. Later that evening, as they drove home in Alana's truck, Kira sat quietly for a while before finally speaking. Mom? Yes, baby? Do you ever get tired of people not believing in you, or a broken bar, or thinking you can't do something just because you're a woman, or because of a broken bar? Alana kept her eyes on the road, but her jaw tightened. All the time, she admitted softly, there were plenty who thought I wouldn't make it through training, plenty who laughed, doubted, even tried to block me, but you know what I did? What? I outworked them, I outlasted them, and when they finally saw what I could do, they stopped laughing. Kira smiled faintly, like Officer Hanks. Alana chuckled, exactly like Officer Hanks. People like him only know one thing, appearances. But appearances don't win wars, they don't save lives. Strength does, discipline does, integrity does. Carol let her mom's words settle inside her. They drove through the quiet streets, the night air heavy with cicadas. Finally, Carol whispered, I want to be like you one day. Alana reached over, squeezing her daughter's hand. You already are. But the story didn't end there. The incident at the station sparked conversations in their community. Word spread quickly about the officer who laughed, about the Special Forces mother who walked in and shut him down. The Johnsons didn't seek the attention, but it came anyway. Some people were inspired. Girls who had never thought about the military before now asked Kira's mom about service, about strength, about breaking barriers. Others were defensive, insisting Officer Hanks hadn't meant anything by his words. But the truth was out there, undeniable. And Hanks? He kept his head down after that day. He avoided eye contact with Alana whenever she came by the station for community outreach. Rumors swirled that he had been reprimanded, maybe even demoted. Nobody laughed when her name came up anymore. For Kira, the memory of sitting in the chair while Hanks mocked her would never fully disappear. But neither would the memory of the moment her mom walked through that door. Unshakable, unstoppable, undeniable. It wasn't just about proving her mother's strength. It was about proving that truth doesn't need permission to exist. It stands on its own. And that night, in that police station, Truth had walked in wearing combat boots,